Hi, everyone. I am Megan Geiser, and I am the special education consulting teacher at Quincy Elementary and Scott Dual Language Elementary. And today we will be discussing how to develop high quality IEPs, but focusing on PLAAFPS specifically. Right. So below is a link to a Google document where you can take notes and access additional information. When you open the Google document, please copy to create a new one that will be saved to your Google Drive. And this way we won't have everybody adding their own notes to the shared one. That way you have your own. And I believe I also had the link within the professional development. So maybe you guys had access to it earlier and we're able to kind of look through it. But I have it broken down for each slide. So if you want to take notes for each slide, you are welcome to. As we go through, there are pieces where I explain things in more depth and I have that information on there. So you have all of that as you need it. And then we also will be going to a website to look at some additional information about PLAAFPS, and that link to the website is in that Google document as well. All right, let's go ahead and begin. All right, so to begin, when an IEP team is looking at writing a new IEP, the first thing that team members should do is review the previous IEP. This will ensure a number of things like, first, was the student successful in their previous goal or goals? Or maybe was a student unsuccessful in their previous goal or goals? And if they were unsuccessful, why? You know, this is where we really need to dig in, and we can review the prior progress reports, progress notes, look at case notes. There's some really good information in there as well. And so if a student was unsuccessful, why is that? Was the goal too lofty of a goal? You can really just dig in and answer some of those questions you may have. And this is especially important if you have a new student to your caseload that you're not familiar with, just to familiarize yourself with that end of the paperwork in the previous IEP, along with getting to know the student, obviously. By reviewing the IEP, we can also look and see what data was used, what data was previously collected. And maybe you want to continue using that same data. That's really important as well. Instead of going from one to the next, let's keep it consistent. And then how is that data collected and how is that data tied to the goal? So by reviewing the previous IEP, this information becomes the basis for the new IEP. In addition, the team should also review the most recent evaluation completed. This will also allow team members to better understand the individual student's cognitive and academic abilities. The school psychologist may also have recommendations to better support the child in their general education classroom and what to target within the IEP. I know some of the evaluations that I've looked through, there have been some fantastic recommendations where the school psychologist takes a subtest that was given and that information from that subtest, and then they have recommendations on how we can support that child in the gen ed classroom. So if a student has some really great vocabulary or different pieces of the subtest, and if they have great vocabulary and they're able to answer oral questions, we can make sure that we have that written in the PLAAF and we can support the student that way. So after reviewing the IEP, the previous IEP, and the most recent evaluation, the team now has baseline information necessary to write the PLAAF or the PLAAFPS. And here I just have a nice visual that I found that I really liked. Who is the part of the educational team? I know you guys know this, but just remembering that it's not just a special education teacher that is doing all of this. It's a team effort, and we are focusing on the student first and foremost. Parents are such a huge piece of a team that we have to make sure that we include them in the process of creating the IEP, and that the gen ed teachers, additional service providers, they can all provide really vital information when we are writing IEPs and creating high quality PLAAFPS. So the big question, what exactly is a PLAAFP? We've heard it, we've heard this acronym many times. I mean, we write them all the time, but what does it really and truly mean? Well, a PLAAFP stands for the present level of academic achievement and functional performance of a child. Now, it's really important to notice what present level of academic achievement and functional performance means. In previous reauthorizations of IDEA, it was called the present level of educational performance. However, with the new acronym of PLAAFP, it helps an IEP team really and truly focus on the whole child. This means that it is not just academic achievement that we're looking at. It's like the big three. We're not just looking at reading, we're not just looking at math, and we're not just looking at writing. But now the team can look at the child's social emotional skills, communication skills, daily living skills. So that's what we call functional performance. And again, it just really gears the IEP team to look at the whole child. And on this slide, I just put out some of the, what the PLAAFP is within those big three, the social, emotional, motor, communication, and daily living skills. That really hits that functional performance component along with the academic achievement. Okay, so now what are the components that a PLAAFP must contain? Before we really dig into each of these, I just want to let you know that all of this information that I will discuss in more detail, it is on that Google document under slide 6, and I have everything I will say written out there for you, because I don't want to put it all on here for you to read, for example. That way you can access that on that Google document for you to take notes or reflect at another time. Okay, so a high quality PLAAFP must include, first and foremost, the strength of a student. And this can include that personal strength that we're really, really good at writing in our PLAAFPs. We build some really strong and positive relationships with our students. We know them so very well that we'd like to put in there those little pieces about them. We like to put in that they enjoy playing basketball, for example, or that art is an interest of theirs. Some other examples of those personal strengths can be like they are friendly and outgoing. They have a great sense of humor, or they have a great smile. They're always willing to try their best. Those are all really, really great personal strengths that I think are very important to put in here, because that can play on how we can support them with reinforcements, how we can support them with a positive behavior plan if needed. However, we also want to focus not just on that personal piece, but we also want to put in on how those strengths can allow the student to progress in their general education curriculum. So that might look like, for example, the student has a really great listening comprehension, and this could be information you get from the evaluation report. So how can we take that strength, listening comprehension, and support them in their classroom? Well, in that case, the student can answer questions orally in their classroom. Another example, they're a really hard worker and they persevere through difficult tasks. So these are all just strengths that the team can build on to allow the student to progress in their general education classroom and with the general education curriculum. Another piece with the strengths, this is also a wonderful location to put the academic, if that's what your PLAAFP is about. This could be your communication strengths with the functional progress here as well with the data that is collected. And we're going to dig in really deeply to the data component here very, very soon. So this is just another place to put those strengths for the content specific area. Okay, number 2, a high quality PLAAFP should contain a description of the student's needs or weaknesses or deficits in that academic and or functional skill area. Again, this is where that data collection comes into play. Again, we will discuss that soon. And it really should reflect the area of need in the academic, social, emotional, behavior, and or functional skills. Where's the deficit? What does the data tell us? Where's the breakdown? Number 3, a PLAAFP must include an effect on progress in the general education classroom. So this is an explanation of how the disability affects the student's involvement and progress in the general education curriculum. Number 4, here's where I get on my little soapbox. Data, data, data. A PLAAFP must include data. As you know, data drives everything that we do within special education, especially when writing an IEP. We need multiple data points, not just one piece collected, but we want to have multiple ones to really gather and paint a clear picture of what the student is capable of and where their deficits might be. So for the next component where we dig into some examples of data that should be collected, I'm going to really refer to reading data right now, just because that's an area that I have a lot of background in, I'm interested in, and it's just kind of, it's easy for me to use some examples within reading. So some data that you can and should collect for a high quality PLAAFP. First, we have our screening assessments. And these are assessments that are given to all students at the start of the school year and throughout the school year. And they are things like those curriculum-based measures. And they could include DIBELS, Ames-Webb, Fontes and Pinnell, and our Scantron results, because all students are given those. For Topeka 501, we do Scantron and we do Fontes and Pinnell, but all students are giving those 2 assessments beginning of the school year, in the winter, and again in the spring. So we really should be putting those in our PLAAFP, because that's telling us where our students fall compared to their peers, their same age peers, and the percentile ranking of where they are for Scantron, for example. And then we can also compare it to our district average too. And it just gives us a nice picture of where they are compared to peers on screening assessments and being compared to same age peers across the nation. We also should be adding in data from screening, diagnostic assessments. And these are used to assess specific skills or components of a skill. So again, for reading, for example, we would find assessments that could target phonemic awareness, phonics skills, fluency, just having students do some reading, and we can do error analysis and see where's the breakdown with their reading. So with a diagnostic assessment, they inform instruction and or intervention. And they can be formal, standardized tests. So that would be something that our school psychologists would give with evaluations like the Woodcock-Johnson, the WISC. Those are standardized. And they can also be criterion referenced assessments. I like to think of diagnostic assessments. We have our big picture Scantron. We have our Fontes and Pinnell, where it gives us a reading equivalency, grade level equivalency, I'm sorry. And they're telling us, those 2 pieces are telling us that our student is performing below grade level. Well, now let's dig in with the diagnostic and determine where's the deficit, where are they breaking down with their reading skills, for example. So by doing the diagnostics, we can see, okay, they know their letter sounds, they know their letter names, but the breakdown is coming when they're having to decode consonant, vowel, consonant words. So it just tells us exactly where the deficit lies. All right, and then the final component that a PLAAFP must contain is our connection to the goals and or services. So I visualize this as being that bridge. We're bridging the PLAAFP and those areas, the strengths, the needs, the current performance, the impact with the general education. And we're taking all of those to create a goal that's individualized and is data-driven. All right, let's continue on. All right, so to review, the key characteristics of a PLAAF in the illustration here. I'm a visual person. I like to see the big picture. And I think this just kind of reflects really nicely about the data sources that we need: recent data, we need current data, we need multiple sources of data, et cetera, et cetera. But I really want to focus and highlight on characteristic number 5, that a high quality PLAAF should be written in a clear language, easily understood by all team members, including the student and the family. Something that I remind myself as I am writing IEPs and high quality PLAAFs, I remind myself, would this pass a stranger test? Meaning, would somebody outside of education, would they be able to read my PLAAF and know exactly what the student has strengths in, where the deficits are, and when they read that goal, they know exactly what that student will be working on for a year. Sometimes we get really, it's easy for us to use our acronyms, CBC, QPS, PLAAF, for example. But we have to be mindful that not everybody that reads these, parents, educational advocates, they may not know what that means. Even though we use the term every single day, we need to be mindful that it passes that stranger test, and it's okay to over-explain things, which you will see very soon how I do that. So I just wanted to focus on that number 5 there, that we just want to make sure that it is written in clear language that's easily understood for all. So below the illustration, I have a link to the IRIS website. And this is a wonderful resource that covers so many components of special education and really digs deeply into the IEP process. So I'm going to ask that everybody click on the link, or you can use the link within the Google document that I've provided. It should be under slide 7, the link to IRIS. And once you get to that website, you're going to see a chart that breaks down each of the necessary components for a high quality PLAAF. And then within that, it also has some guiding questions. So what I'm going to do, just in case not everybody can access it for whatever reason, I'm going to open it up on my computer. And you will see as you scroll down, here we are. So developing high quality PLAAF statements. And it has a breakdown of the PLAAF elements that we just went into detail, what is necessary for a high quality PLAAF. So that element is here, a description of it, and then guiding questions that the team can begin asking each other when writing a high quality PLAAF. We've talked a little bit about it, but I just really liked the visual of the document here and being able to see each component really listed out nicely and organized in an easy way to read it. So I'm going to let you guys on your own just read through the chart here and look at each of the components. We'll do this maybe like 5 minutes to give you a chance to do that. And I will say at the very end, and I promise I'll stop talking to give you time to read, but at the end of the chart at the bottom, there is a teacher here, and she has a little narrative about how she collects data for her PLAAF and what that process looks like for her and her team. And if you don't want to listen to it, they have the option of the transcript that you can read as well. Okay? So I'm going to come on up to the top and give everybody about 5 minutes to read through all of this. And then for those of you that are looking at the chart on my computer, I'm going to scroll on down so you can access the rest of it. Okay, and again, for those of you that are looking at my screen, I'm going to scroll down to the teacher, and you can read her transcript here on the process that she and her team has for writing PLAAFPS. Okay, I hope everybody had enough time to read through that chart and the teacher's information there, but we're going to go back to our PowerPoint. Before we jump back into the PLAAF information, I would recommend to check out that IRIS website. Again, it's got some really great information. It's very not hands-on, but they have a lot of videos, and it's just really great. There's a lot of great stuff in there. All right, so let's jump back into our PLAAF. And what does a PLAAF look like for Topeka 501 IEP? Well, as you guys know, when you mark yes on the content area, you're stating that based on the most recent evaluation and ongoing data collection, the student does have a need in this content area that requires special education services or related services. So then once you click yes there, you have some boxes that pop up. And the first one is strengths. And this is where you're going to list those strengths related to the content area. As we discussed before, this is one of the key components of a high quality PLAAF. This is an area where you can put that personal spin on it about the student's strengths. What do they enjoy doing outside of school? Maybe if they really like art, this is where that can go. I've seen how an example of a student that gets along very well with peers and adults, and they just really want to do their best. That's okay to still put in there, but we also want to remember we want to put the strengths in that can support the student in their general education classroom as well with that curriculum the examples from the previous slide there too. This is a great place to put the strengths based on the data and the content area. So right now we're in reading. If the student has performed well on a reading assessment, this would be a fantastic place to put that strength there with the content area. The next one are the student needs. This is where we list those needs related to the content area. The needs, the weaknesses, the deficits here. Next is the current performance, and this is that data, data, data. Marsha, data, data, data. The data needs to be current, and we also need to remember to compare students' current performance to the expected levels of same age peers. This is really showing why they need specialized instruction in this content area. Sometimes I feel like I repeat myself often in the PLAAF here, because the current performance, in my opinion, is where I put the bulk of all the data I completed. I'm very detailed. I explain things, maybe over-explain things, but remember, I really want to pass that stranger test and ensuring that the parents, educational advocates, anybody that sees this IEP for the student understands and is clear what they're working on, what their level is, where their deficits are, what their strengths are, and the goal. So you might see that you have repeated strengths and needs in the current performance, but I think that's okay as long as you have very detailed, lots of data for the current performance. And finally, impact of progress. So this is where we're going to describe specifically the impact of the student's exceptionality upon ability to access and progress in general education curriculum. So that's what it looks like in our WebKids for Topeka 501, the breakdown of those components that we need to have for a high quality PLAAF. So let's start talking about some examples. What does a high quality PLAAF look like? We know what it needs, but what does it look like? Again, because I'm a fan of visuals and I think I'm a visual learner, I like to see it. I found this one and I just really liked the breakdown of the stair steps and how they progress within each other on the 6 major steps to develop a PLAAF. Number 1, data, data, data. Here we go again. Collecting the data and then examining student strengths. Identify those concerns and needs based on the data. Describe the impact of the disability. Reflect on those guiding questions. Some of those guiding questions were in the IRIS model. They were fantastic. I really liked them. So reflecting on those and then writing the PLAAF and just how that stair step of progress there. Okay. So now we're going to review examples of high quality PLAAFs. I have provided examples for academic area and a behavior, social, emotional PLAAF. Just so you know, these examples are also on the Google document for you to review, for you to use in future IEPs, for you to take notes on. I wanted to make sure I had it in both platforms, so it is word for word from here onto that Google document, because I want you guys to have a strong, true example of a high quality PLAAF for our student. So the first PLAAF example is an academic one in the area of reading. And we start with our strengths. And just so you guys know, this is a 2nd grade student. And we have, to begin with, is that personal strength about this kiddo. We talked about how he's very kind. He follows directions and he's able to answer oral questions. He enjoys reading picture books with staff members. You know, those things that we pick up on about our students, again, because we have such strong relationships with them. We get to know them really, really well when we work with them. I think it's really important to have that information in here. But we also want to have strengths that connect to the content area and how we can best support our students. So there's an example of this. He has a strong expressive language skills and large vocabulary. So this information probably we found it in the most recent evaluation that the school psychologist completed. So because of that expressive language and high vocabulary, large vocabulary, he's able to actively engage in class discussions. He performs well on auditory comprehension. Well, what does that mean? Here's the stranger test. We put an example because not everybody understands what auditory comprehension might mean. So here we have, that means following multi-step directions and answering comprehension questions. The second paragraph is strengths that the student demonstrated on the data that was collected for his reading skills. And we have what letters he can identify, letter names, I'm sorry. We have what letter sounds he can identify. And then we also have information from a diagnostic assessment that was given, the phonological awareness skills test, or the PAST, and then a breakdown of what areas of the PAST he demonstrated strengths in. Now you might say, Megan, this doesn't pass your stranger test because you just have phonological awareness skills. Not everybody knows what that means. You have the different tasks that the student completed with more than 80% accuracy. So we've got concept of spoken word, but what does that mean? Don't worry. When we get into our current performance, I have much more detail there. This is just showing the strengths that the student has connected to the content area. Okay? So this is a good example of a breakdown of the strengths component. We have a lot of information in here. I'm sure we can come up with more about this student, really digging into previous IEPs and evaluations to help find the information here. So now we're going to go into the needs component, and this is based on the data that was collected. And I have in here the deficits, the needs given after the student was given the PAST. And I have a breakdown of the subtests of the PAST where the student showed less than 80% accuracy. And then he was also given the quick phonics screener. Once again, you might be asking, Megan, does not pass the stranger test. There is not detailed information where you're explaining things. And I know that to be true because, again, we're going to get to that during the current performance. But this is just saying where the needs are for the student. Okay, now we're getting to my favorite part, the student's current performance level. And you'll see this is the detailed component. So I have here again the student and his ability to identify letter names, identify letter sounds, both upper and lowercase, because he's a second grader. And we just wanted to see where if the breakdown was starting there, because if the breakdown for reading is because he doesn't know all of his sounds, well, it's going to be pretty hard to read words when you're missing sounds to be able to blend. And I put some more detail on this one. I think it's really important because this is an error analysis component. For example, the student was able to identify 21 out of 26 lowercase letter names, and I put in there exactly what he did when he was given this assessment. So he said J for T, he flipped B's and D's, said N for H, and V for Y. I find this fascinating because we know B and D reversals are pretty common for our primary elementary friends. Second grade, it can still be a problem. Beyond second grade is when we get concerned. However, saying N for H, I find this, like I said, fascinating because they're very close in how they're formed and how they look. Same with V and Y. And then we go into our letter sounds, and I put in there exactly which ones he missed. Because if you don't have the actual assessment where you've marked, nobody would know that unless you put it in the PLAAFP. And think about those students that we have that move in from a different district, and we would just say, he verbally identified 21 out of 26 uppercase letter sounds. You would never know which ones he did not know. So you want to make sure you provide that information. That way parents know if the student ever goes to a new school, the new teacher knows exactly which letter sounds he might still be missing. And I just want to point out here on those lowercase letter sounds, the errors that he made are common with the letter names he did not know. So that's one piece of our data collection. Okay, don't get overwhelmed. There is a lot of information here, but you'll notice the difference between the strengths and the needs and the current performance, where I've added much more detail. I've explained every component of it, so everybody that reads this will know exactly what we're talking about here. So the first paragraph is about the phonological awareness skills, and I even put a little blip in there about what does that mean. And we know it because we do this all day, every day. Parents don't know it, so we want to explain it to them. And then I put in the strengths that the student had with the PLAAFPS. So for example, the concept of spoken word right here, I went ahead in parentheses, because I love parentheses, I put in what does that mean, a definition of concept of spoken word. And it's just a very simple, counting the number of words in a short spoken sentence. And this student, he completed that with 83% accuracy. Rhyme completion, I'm sure parents can understand what that means, but let's come down here to our phoneme isolation of initial sounds. Phoneme, that's definitely an educator word. So let's explain that to parents. That means the first sound in big is the, and this student completed that with 100% accuracy. Again, phoneme blending, onset, and rhyme. Well, that means saying ish, fish, 100% accuracy. So it looks like a lot, but it's just really making sure that it's explained and that anybody that sees this part of the current performance knows exactly what we're talking about. So after the strengths detailed, I now go into our deficits. Where did the students start breaking down? And we're still talking about our diagnostic assessments that were given to the student. So I have the breakdown where the deficits were on the past. And again, I have the explanation for each component and the percentage of accuracy. Oh, and you'll notice here, oh, sorry, my little thing got in the way. Okay, you'll notice at the very end of that paragraph, the last one with the deficits on the phonological awareness, I have compared it to a same age peer. So I'm saying that a same age peer is able to complete these skills with at least 80% accuracy. And I probably could go into more detail and explain that all of those skills are typically mastered at kindergarten, into kindergarten through first grade. Therefore, a second grade peer is expected to complete them. Okay, we continue on with our current performance. Again, multiple points of data. That's going to make our goals individualized and specific to a student's deficit. So the first paragraph here, I have information about the quick phonics screener. Once again, I explain what that means, where the student is asked to read both nonsense and real consonant, vowel, consonant, CVC words. And then I have examples of what the student was asked to read. So nonsense, CVC, I put in there actual examples of the words that he was asked to read with those nonsense, TIG, bath. And he completed that with 40% accuracy. And then he read real CVC words. Once again, I've got examples of those in there. And then I'm tying that to what is expected of a same age peer. In second grade, a same age peer is expected to read both of those, nonsense and real words, with at least 80% accuracy. All right, and then the final two paragraphs here go back to our district level assessment. So the first one is the Scantron results. And then we have Fontes and Pinnell at the bottom. And I like to explain what that looks like. What does that mean? Because not everybody knows a Fontes and Pinnell. What is that? So I just put a quick little explanation in there. He's asked to read a book at his current reading level and then ask the comprehension questions after he's read it. And I have what he read at, but I also tie that to, yeah, level E. But what is a level E? Well, that means a beginning of first grade reading level. I will say, I worked in other districts and we did not do Fontes and Pinnell. So when I came here, I really had to educate myself on the different levels. I mean, I was constantly looking it up. So if some of our educators don't know, we want to make sure that parents know exactly what a level E means. And then I like to also put in making sure at the very end, the testing facilitator noted that he required prompting and encouragement to answer comprehension questions. It wasn't just an automatic thing. He needed some additional prompting. Okay, Let me make sure. Okay, so that is it for our current performance. You can see how long that would be in an IEP, but man, how impactful is that? We have data across, we've got letter sounds diagnostic, we've got the PASS diagnostic, we've got the QPS, we have the Scantron and Fontes and Pinnell. We have 5 data points for this child for just reading. But we're really focusing in on where's the breakdown. We know their Scantron score is low. We know their Fontes and Pinnell score is low. Therefore, we went into diagnostic. Where's the deficit? Knowing that if we target that deficit, those other scores should go up. Okay, so what goal would you write for this student? We have our baseline information here, and I just rewrote it in a little bit cleaner, not so narrative way. And I just am curious, I'm not going to, well, it's pre-recorded, so I can't call on people, but just kind of brainstorm, what goal would you write for this kiddo based on the data that was collected? So I'll give you about a minute to kind of have a goal in your head. And I'm sorry, I keep jumping in. I know you guys are all trying to think right now, but remember, our high quality PLAAF, the final piece, number 5, we're bridging the PLAAF information to writing an individualized goal for a child. Okay, I think it's pretty easy to come up with a really good individualized goal for this kiddo. And I think it's because we collected so many pieces of data for him. Actually, with this kiddo, the team, we decided on making 2 reading goals for him. The first one was over phonological awareness based on that past data. And the reason why we did this, we as a team, we were looking at his percentages. 3 of the 4 were at 67%. That's awfully close to 80, the 80% mark. And then rhyme recognition was at 50%. So our concern was only having that goal and only focusing on that. He may make it really, really soon, which is awesome. We want that, but the team decided to go ahead and make another reading goal that's based on his phonics skills. So he has a goal over phonological awareness, and he also has a goal for phonics, targeting the nonsense words and reading real words, decoding those words accurately. Did you guys come up with those? If you did, give yourself a pat on the back or gold star. All right, we're going to move now into an example of a behavior PLAAF. It has obviously you guys know it follows the same framework. We're going to start with our student strengths. Once again, we're going to begin with that personal piece, that this student has improved drastically in the last year. They enjoy working along with adults and peers. They will often work for extra art time in the classroom, and they've even expressed that art is one of their favorite specials when they go to specials rotation. This is so important to put in there, especially for kiddos that exhibit some behaviors, because then we know, ooh, let's add that to their positive reinforcement system. We want to know what are their interests? What do they like to do? So we have that personal piece, and now we're going to go into the other strengths for their behavior. So this student understands spoken directions. They're able to understand, follow conversations with peers and adults. They like to do things in logical sequence, in orders. So my little brain has a spark here. Logical sequence. I bet they would benefit from having a little schedule that goes along with them so they know exactly what's coming up next. That's how we can play on that strength of the student to help support them in their general education classroom throughout their school day. Then we have a note here that says when they come into the room, they're able to get started with their routine by following a set order of events. Once again, they like knowing what's next, and that routine is very important. So let's play on that strength. They handle transitions easily. They can go from task to task or classroom to classroom. The classroom teacher reports that once they are de-escalated from a situation, they're able to reflect, and they often seek resolutions with peer and or adults. Man, that's a lot of wonderful strengths that the student exhibits. How great is that to read that and we already know, let's put this into place, let's do this. We can play on those strengths to make them have successful days. So our next piece are the needs. Here we say that the student struggles sometimes when they're frustrated to really think rationally. When peer interaction is not very smooth, that could be a miscommunication, peers that begin to annoy the student, they're not cooperating with their set plan that they have in place, they really struggle to handle that. And sometimes that irritability is not age appropriate. They have a hard time managing disappointment, irritability, and what does that look like then when that happens? And they have examples in here. That could be throwing chairs, that could be flipping tables. At times we are showing, they show aggression towards peers. What does that look like? Because what I find to be aggression may be different than somebody else. So we want to have our set examples in there. When the student is aggressive, that's what this looks like. Pushing, shoving, slapping. And then the team will work towards teaching the student the skills to better handle their frustrations. I think this is a really great example of needs. Where's our needs in that content area? Here we have behavior. Well, it looks like it's around peer interaction. It looks like when things don't go as planned, when the student gets frustrated, they're very irritable. What can we do here? Great, so our next one is our current performance, data. Once again, this student, they have the data collected. They had 10 discipline referrals for the first 9 weeks. They were tardy 22 times and absent 10 times for the first 9 weeks. That's interesting to me, you know, looking through that data. They were gone quite a bit. They were tardy quite a bit that first 9 weeks. They had quite a few discipline referrals. I wonder if there's a correlation there. What's going on? Let's dig a little deeper. They had acts of aggression towards objects 5 times a day on average and towards peers 1 time a day. I also think it's really important for our behavior when we're collecting the data to review it and see if there's a pattern. You know, maybe the peer aggression towards peers are on average Mondays. Coming back to school from the weekend, they have a hard time adjusting back. I've seen patterns of behavior in the afternoon for students where they really are struggling. They've held it together all morning and then they're falling apart in the afternoon. So what can we do to support that student with the behavior data that has been collected? What can we do to proactively support them so we're not reacting? So even though we're not in an academic setting here, we're in behavior, data collection is still key. Data drives everything we do. Okay, and then we have our impact. So as a result of emotional disturbance, the student's inability to self-regulate and process appropriately is negatively affecting his or her classroom performance. This student's behavior manifests itself into aggression, which affects their progress in the general education curriculum. So we're tying it in. What is the impact of their exceptionality on their progress in the gen ed classroom? All right, guys, that is all that I have today. If you have any questions at all, I am more than happy to answer anything. As you can see, this is something that I really like to do, weirdly enough. I love collecting data, and I love putting all that data in an IEP like this and really figuring out what a kiddo needs based on the data. I have my contact information, my email address in that Google document. So if you have any questions at all, please feel free to email me. I'd be happy to help out in any way. Like I said, everything that we've discussed and all the examples that we just reviewed, they're also in that Google document for your use. Please use them anyway. If it will support you next year writing high quality PLAAFPS, I would love it. But again, please feel free to reach out, and I appreciate it. Have a great summer, everybody. Thank you.